Hey, Alan Cortez here, aka the Bird Bay, and in this video I want to talk about, can you own a parrot and live in an apartment? I get this question all of the time from prospective bird owners, parrot owners that want to have and get the first parrot, but they're just not sure if it's even possible to own a parrot and live in an apartment or a condo. And the short answer is yes. But it depends on a few things. Number one, you have to look into the species of parrot that you want to own. For example, a cockatoo versus a Senegal parrot versus a cockatiel or a conure are going to have different mannerisms or behaviors for that species. Now, as an example here, an extreme, a cockatoo or a macaw tends to be very chattery, very loud, and when they screech, you can hear it down the block. That's how loud they can be. So if you look into it and you're maybe looking to get like a cockatoo or a bigger bird, you have to understand the bigger the bird, the louder the screech. The louder the screech, the less the neighbors might tolerate all the noise that's coming from your bird, right? That's super important to know. So look into the species of the parrot that you want to get. Cockatoos tend to be a little bit more needy for attention. They tend to be loud. When they're loud, you can hear it from a mile away. Macaws are the same way. But that doesn't mean that you can't train these larger birds to be more quiet or just reduce the level of screeching. And you got to understand, no matter what type of bird you own, they are birds at the end of the day. They're going to make noise. They're going to have their occasional screech. They're going to chirp throughout the day, make noise throughout the day, especially in the morning when they make their flock calls, or in the evening when they naturally make their flock calls, calling the flock back, right? So as an example for an extreme end would be a cockatoo or a macaw. And then on the other end, a smaller bird like a conure still makes a lot of noise and their screeches tend to be loud. And then you have a cockatiel, which is a little bit smaller version, of a parrot, but they still tend to make noise throughout the day. Their noise level tends to be a lot more tolerable. It's quote unquote a little bit more cute. I personally went with a Senegal parrot or the Poicephalus species of bird because they have a tendency to be way more quiet compared to some of these other species, and they make great apartment birds. So I have a Senegal parrot, but you can look into a Jardine's parrot, red-bellied parrot that's also in the same family, right? They tend to be a little bit less loud, right? A little bit more tolerable. Then number two is training and taming. This is going to be key, aside from the species, to make sure that you reduce those unwanted screeches with your parrot, right? And people have a tendency to run over to their birds when they scream because they naturally hear a loud screech and they're like, oh, what's going on over here? You give them attention and it reinforces that bad behavior because they learn really quickly, hey, if I yell, if I scream, I'm going to get something that I want, whether it's food, attention, or just to provoke a reaction out of you, right? I hear a lot of parrot owners, or I see a lot of them, they get a bird, it starts to yell and they get frustrated because it's annoying and they go, shut up, or they go, throw things out the cage, or they make some sort of feedback, whether physical or verbal, to get the bird to be quiet. And that leads to reinforcing that negative behavior, right? And, whatever type of reaction you give them, if you give them any type of reaction, a parrot, when they scream, it's going to reinforce that behavior. Now, I've seen some people have success with timeouts for like excessively loud screeching, which can tend to work, about 2 to 5 minute timeout where they just cover the cage, get the bird to quiet down, and then they uncover the cage when it settles down. But the issue is that when you do that, the bird is still getting attention, and it might postpone or fix the symptoms, so to speak, right away, but long term it's not going to reduce or remove that behavior altogether. Another one that I see is squirting your bird with the water bottle because it has an immediate response. They get shocked, they get squirted in the face, or like, oh my God, what's going on? But they're still getting attention because you're coming over the cage and you're evoking some sort of response. And they don't always see as 1 + 1 = 2, right? So they might screech and then you squirt them with a water bottle and then they say, what the heck? Why'd you squirt me? They don't sometimes associate the two. So then this negative behavior continues. The best thing that you can possibly do is to teach your bird to not screech as much. As when it screeches, just ignore it completely. And once it settles down, 10, 15 minutes later, then you come over, or you train them to, give some sort of whistle, like a cute whistle. When they do that whistle, you respond back, and they quickly learn, hey, if I do this type of whistle instead of a screech, my, human is going to come over. And the other thing you want to make sure that you are, checked off the box is, making sure that you're looking at the basics. Does your bird get enough sleep, 12 to 14 hours a day? Does it have the proper diet? Is it eating a nice, well-balanced pellet diet that's approved by avian vets? Is it eating mostly seeds and foods that don't, offer a lot of complete nutritional value? This can also lead to screaming, right? I've seen cases where, I talk to parrot owners who have a really bad behaved parrot. They change their diet, and within, a week or two, their demeanor, their way they communicate, and that, bad behavior goes away altogether. Another thing you want to take a look at is your bird getting enough time out of its cage? You got to understand that birds are meant to, be flying around in the wild. They're traveling, they're foraging. They're not meant to necessarily be in a cage. So if they're, confined all day, they're going to get bored. They're going to have nothing better to do but to scream, or they're going to be frustrated. And this can also lead to like feather plucking and all these other types of things as well, right? So all of these things are going to impact the noise level of, your parrot. And then the third point here is making sure that you choose your apartment strategically. Is your apartment pet friendly? How thin are the walls between you and your neighbors? How are your neighbors? Are they usually very tolerant? Have you spoken with them, letting them know that you have a parrot and it's only going to be making noise throughout, early parts of the day and later in the afternoon, right? And, lastly, you want to make sure that you speak to your landlord or leasing company, whereas, first to get approval, and, most are cool with birds, and you can, let your neighbors know, hey, like, I'm going to get a parrot. It's going to be making noise in the beginning, but I'm going to be training my parrot to reduce its unwanted screeching in the next 2 to 3 months, so that they know, hey, I'm proactively doing something to improve or reduce the situation altogether, right? And the other point is you have to understand when it's appropriate, or the frequency of screeching for a bird. Typically, this is going to be early in the morning and later in the afternoon. For me, where I live, my condo tends to be the whole building is pet friendly, so everyone that comes in here has dogs. They understand that there's going to be noise, and they're pretty tolerant of noise from pets. But if it's if the screeching is coming between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. where most people are working, then it's typically going to be okay, because it's one of those things where it's not like your apartment's going to expect you to be quiet 24/7 altogether, right? So it's going to be okay for most, but I would definitely double check. And some pro tips here, keep your doors and windows closed most of the day when you're not home, or even when you are, as long as it's not too hot or something like that. To reduce the noise that the neighbors are going to hear, because where I live, if Elfie, my Senegal parrot, yells, you can hear it echo because of the layout of the building. You can hear it echo all the way toward the end of the building. So I tend to keep the doors and windows open when I'm working from home, because I'm here and it doesn't really make much noise when I'm here. But if I leave, I make sure that I close all the windows and doors to reduce any unwanted noise. And, like I mentioned before, let your neighbors know that you're going to be training your parrot to reduce its screaming altogether for the next 2 to 3 months after you get it, so that they have some patience and they understand where you're coming from, and they know that you're trying to do something about the situation or events that could occur. Let them know that they have a tendency to make some noise early in the morning and later toward the afternoon, right? So these are some things that you can think about and start to implement when you start thinking about, like, hey, can I actually own a parrot and live in an apartment? I was able to do it successfully. I've had no complaints from my neighbors, and most of the time people don't know that I own a parrot unless they see me walking around with my parrot on my shoulder with a harness, right? So just some quick tips here, and let me know Drop a comment in the comment section. What is another topic or another type of video you want me to cover on bird behavior, parrot training, free flight, any of these topics that you might have questions about. And feel free to follow Elfie and I on Instagram in the comment section below, in the description below. I'm going to post a link there, and you can just kind of check out what we do on a weekly basis. And I also have a free Facebook group as a resource for all aspiring, new, or current parrot owners looking to have a like-minded community of individuals who also, want to share tips, feedback, and have questions answered regarding parrot training, behavior, and all that good stuff. That's it for today. Alan Cortez, aka the Bird Bay, and I will see you next time.